Matt George joins us of ABC 10. Matt, how you doing?
Sorry, my microphone was working about as hard as the Sacramento Kings did last night, but we're good. We're up to par. How are you, Alan?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It is all good. Thank you for taking the time on a Friday. It's normally a Friday fun day, and we're trying to make it fun in any way, shape, or form that we can. I'm just going to give you the floor, Matt, to start it off here. I've been here for a couple years now, and I really do feel a part of this Sacramento community, this Kings community. But you were born in this, right? You've been through the depths. You've seen all the different iterations of this team before they were considered the Beam team, before the Beam was even a thing. And I just want to give you the floor to start out here on what in the world we watched yesterday and where that is in terms of some of the worst Kings basketball feelings that you've had throughout your life. So the floor is yours, Matt.
Yeah, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but it's genuine when I say I don't remember Sacramento Kings basketball ever being this bad. And quite literally, the Kings have never started off this bad at any point during the record-long playoff drought that Sacramento went through. I mean, that says something. This team being 3-13 through 16 games, the season being effectively over as we know it, and we're not even to Thanksgiving yet. And there's nothing to hope for this roster, right? You look at like Keegan Murray, maybe, although we have a pretty good understanding of who Keegan Murray is. We believe he should be and will be part of hopefully a bright future here in Sacramento, but he is not the future. You know, through all the years, even when the Kings won 17 games, right? Whether it was Tyreek Evans or DeMarcus Cousins or young De'Aaron Fox, we've always had that one player or at least a couple of players that you're like, okay, it's bad right now, but at least there's something to be hopeful for. Maybe, just maybe, we're watching the beginning of something that can blossom into greatness for Sacramento once again. There's just none of that here in Sacramento. What Kings fans need is hope again. Like, there just isn't any hope with this group. And this Kings team plays about as hopeless, like pathetic, disinterested, self-absorbed basketball as I've ever seen. I don't even know if we can call it basketball at this point. It's just a bunch of individuals that really only care about themselves out there, that are not interested in putting on the jersey and representing Sacramento in any sort of positive way. And Alan, this organization has been terrible for so long, and it starts at the top. It starts internally, and they need to look at themselves in the mirror on all levels. But what irritates the heck out of me is knowing that DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine or Domantas Sabonis or any of these guys are going to be able to move on and blame everything that they're going through on Sacramento. It's the Kings. It's this organization. It's toxic. It's terrible. They might be right, but they also need to look into the mirror and recognize we are not doing anything to make this situation better. I think DeMar DeRozan has been terrible. I think Zach LaVine has been empty calories. Domantas Sabonis is a shell of what he was over the last couple seasons. All these guys need to look into the mirror and realize they are quitting in real time in the NBA. And that is one of the biggest insults or one of the biggest criticisms you can ever give a professional athlete. You quit. And not only did you do it once, you've done it twice in an 8-day span. You did it against the Atlanta Hawks, and then you did it last night against the Memphis Grizzlies. It's pathetic. There's no really other way to put it, and these players need to own that. These players need to wear that. I don't care what any of them say. I don't even care what Doug Christie says. We're beyond words at this point. The actions speak volumes, and the actions say that these aren't volunteers. These are hostages in Sacramento, and if they don't want to be there, get them out. Or until you can get them out, send them home.
Matt George, that was well said, and no better way to kick off this conversation, Matt. Look, like I said, I wanted to give you the floor, and I'm glad that I did because there's nothing else I can add to that. I do want to ask you, though, where do you think, outside of the whole, because this has been my whole thing. This team is bad, and we're talking to Matt George, ABC 10, Locked On Kings as well. This has been my gripe. They're bad. They don't make sense. They don't this, they don't that. There's not going to be a parade, but they're not this bad. When did it all go south to the point where it does feel like they quit and gave up? Do you think that these first couple games, obviously they haven't been able to stay healthy, right? You finally get Keegan back, Domantas Sabonis goes down. But do you think that they felt like the first couple weeks here, and it doesn't help that they faced some of the best teams in the league, do you think that they felt like, hey, we gave it a go, not to give them an excuse, but we gave it a go. It didn't work? Because I think what's going on with DeMar is that this was all kind of part of the plan. And if they played well, they would continue and he'd get playoff basketball. If they didn't play well, all right, cool, let's have a conversation. There was just no legitimate bites at the apple in the summer for that to happen. But do you think that they had good intentions early? Because Matt, you're at all the practices, or you're at most of the practices. Either you or my guy Kevin John, and the whole thing, training camp was, no, they look great. Dennis Schroeder, you should see this. So, and the problem was they were facing their own defense. So I'm just trying to figure out, when did this thing go south to where they're not even putting forth effort?
Well, I apologize, Alan. It's the connection's breaking.
Now we got Matt by phone.
Look, technology stinks anyway. We need all these streaming services and all these internet providers. Let's go back in time. The phone is better anyway.
That's right.
To see my face.
That's right. No, well, I do. You can see it on ABC 10 every night. But Matt, yeah, long story short, my question was too long anyway. The bottom line is, when did this quiet quitting, if you will, when did this start happening? Do you think something broke the team internally? When did this start happening?
I think this team is just extremely mentally fragile. And when you're in training camp and you're only playing each other and you're just practicing each other and you're not really truly facing adversity yet, I think it's easy to say the right things and think you're going to be just fine. But once you get that first taste of adversity, once you get punched in the mouth for the first time, for lack of a better term, that's when you really learn who you are. And we learned very quickly that this team, they will fold, they will quit, and they have done nothing but fold and quit really since this season began. Now, it hasn't gotten to an extreme level as we've seen versus Atlanta and then versus Memphis last night, but I think this team was just a lot of words and very little substance, very little action. And as we've clearly seen, as soon as kind of the rubber meets the road and as soon as the adversity came, the cracks that were clearly in this locker room started to show. And look, just because you or I or fans or media members or anybody was looking at this Kings team and thinking this is a disjointed roster, this is a roster that cannot coexist, will not work together, doesn't mean the players should believe that. And every indication of how they've played has shown that they felt the same way. They just wouldn't say it. And the fact that, like DeMar DeRozan said during preseason, "Hey, we don't care about what people say, or it ticks us off. It pisses us off, the narratives about this team." Well, those narratives have not just been proven right. They've been more right than even we realized, right? This team is 3-13 through 16 games. I don't even think the national media expected it to be this bad. So I don't think this team ever believed the words that they said in preseason, or they have a funny way of really from the first moment that they hit any sort of adversity, and whether you want to say it's injury driven or not, They folded. They never have looked like a team that's together, that they believe in each other, that they want to play for each other, and they certainly didn't look like a team that had any vested interest in representing Sacramento to the level that Doug Christie wants and does represent Sacramento.
Talking to Matt George, ABC 10, always doing a great job. And you can hear him on our airways from time to time. Matt, let's go here. There were a couple main points that were floating around yesterday, right? And last night after the game. And one of those main points was Domantas Sabonis, out 3 to 4 weeks with that meniscus. And multiple people said this could be the last time we've seen Domantas Sabonis play in a Kings jersey. Can you speak to maybe what you're hearing and whether or not just you personally believe that could be the case?
Yeah, I have not heard or been given any indication that the Kings are anywhere close to trading Domantas Sabonis. I think the Kings would happily trade Domantas Sabonis or DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine or any of these players for the right deal. And honestly, the right deal might be anything that they can get for some of these guys, truth be told. Now, I do know that the Kings are not interested in attaching any sort of draft asset to a Sabonis or a LaVine in order to dump that contract and convince another team like the Brooklyn Nets, who have cap space, to take them So I don't think Sacramento is going to be in that sort of business necessarily. But I do believe anybody and everybody is available. That even includes like a Keegan Murray. That being said, I think if there's a list of who the Kings want to keep going forward the most, I think Keegan is probably at the top of that list. But there's no way in any shape or form that anybody on this roster should be untouchable, should feel untouchable, and that Scott Perry should operate in that way. Everybody is available for the right deal. Domantas Sabonis is certainly on that list. If I were putting money on it, if I were a betting man, Alan, I would bet that Domantas Sabonis and Zach LaVine are still on this roster after the trade deadline simply because of their contracts. But I do believe they're going to be involved in conversations, and I would say to the other 29 teams, hey, if you want it, come and get it. Just find a way to make the money work.
Talking to Matt George at ABC 10. Matt, where do you think there have been a lot of rumblings and bumblings about how we got here, Doug Christie being Domantas Sabonis' personal coach, and now he's the head coach, and whether or not that locker room was fractured or split between the Mike Brown guys and kind of the Doug Christie guys. In a way, you could argue that Domantas Sabonis asked for this in some capacity, maybe not exactly this, but some form of this. Do you think he's happy with what it has become?
Well, Alan, it's not in a way. It's true. I mean, Domantas Sabonis is part of the group of players that wanted a coaching change. I mean, it's been pretty well known that when the Kings went into that summer offseason, when they negotiated with Mike Brown, there were a group of players, some of which are still on this roster, most of which are still on this roster right now, that were not the biggest fans of Mike Brown, that did not want the Kings to extend Mike Brown. And of course, I compare last season to like a junior high school in terms of drama. And there were two lunch tables. There was the Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox lunch table. And then there was the Doug Christie and Domantas Sabonis lunch table. Mm-hmm. And we know what decision the Kings ownership made. They chose the Domantas Sabonis, Doug Christie, and DeMar DeRozan and Malik Monk lunch table. And they now have to wear the fact that was the complete wrong decision. They fired prematurely after a 5-game losing streak, and the Kings are on an 8-game losing streak now and likely going to hit double digits. They fired Mike Brown, the only successful head coach that they've had in the last almost 20 years. And by proxy, they made that decision knowing full well that De'Aaron Fox told them verbatim during the offseason, if you fire Mike, I'm not playing for another coach. Mm-hmm. They made that decision knowing the context. They chose Domantas Sabonis. They chose that group. They chose Doug Christie. So whether all of them deserve to be going through this, I think it's a bit harsh to say anybody deserves it. But this is the bed you made, and now you kind of got to lay in it. And that's why all these players need to look at themselves in the mirror and recognize that they're just as much a part of the problem as the organization itself is. But I can tell you, Domantas Sabonis specifically, I've been told is not happy with how he's being used here in Sacramento. I wouldn't expect him to be happy with the team that's 3-13. Sabonis is a competitor. He's super competitive. He wants to win, and as we've seen, he will play through as many injuries as he can in order to help his team win. That's never been a question. Mm-hmm. So if Domantas Sabonis is not playing, it's because he is legitimately hurt, as we know now with this partially torn meniscus in his left knee. But when he has been playing, I've been told he's been frustrated with how he's being used, how it feels like other guys, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, maybe even Russell Westbrook, are being featured more on offense than he is. There has been a drastically significant drop-off in his production, especially as a passer, which speaks to how horrible this offense is. Even if Doug Christie wants to say it's fine, it's absolutely not. The offense is terrible. The defense is bad, but we expected the defense to be bad. The offense is horrendous compared to the assets that they have on this roster. And Domantas Sabonis is not happy with how he's being used. And what I say to that, Alan, is, hey, tough, man. Nobody's happy with what's going on here, and you were part of the reason why we got to this point. So, again, look in the mirror, own your element of it, and accept that, hey, man, there's not just one person to blame for all of this.
Matt George, ABC 10. Matt, one more, and we'll get you out of here. The other note that took over Kings Twitter, if you will, or the Kings social atmosphere last night was Doug Christie, and whether or not Doug Christie is a lame duck, whether or not this is part of Scott Perry's larger plan, whether or not Doug was put in a good position. Matt, I've said this. I've compared Doug to kind of a college-esque coach, not in a disrespectful way, just how he said, hey, play for pride, play for your city. I think it would have resonated really well if he had a young group, not a bunch of 35-year-olds that have no connection to Sacramento. What are your feelings and what are you maybe hearing when it comes to Doug Christie? I know Carmichael Dave has been extremely vocal saying, hey, they're not moving off of Doug Christie during the season because there would be no point. But outside of that, he's got the 2-year deal with the 3rd-year option. Does it feel like he is a lame duck in this space? Is there any way he can save this maybe after the trade deadline if a young, scrappy group plays well? What are your thoughts on Doug?
Well, personally, I mean, two things can be true. Number one, I don't believe Doug Christie should be the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. I think Mike Brown should still be the head coach of the Sacramento Kings, and I think the Kings probably recognize their error in that way. And I know I've exhausted people by talking about Mike Brown over the almost year now since he's been fired. That being said, Mike Brown is gone. Doug Christie is here. And I have to be consistent with what I said about Mike Brown talking about Doug. This is poorly built issue from at the foundation, at its core. That is the issue. So I felt that there was no way really that Doug Christie could fail this season coming into this year, because I felt that any failures of this organization would start with the players and with the construction of this roster that we know is broken. And it turns out it's even more broken than we thought. There's no way a roster consisting of this much talent should be as horrible as it is, and not even trying to play. I mean, at least the other teams, like the Indiana Pacers, are having a down year. The other teams that are amongst the cellar in the league right now that have 1, 2, 3 wins, at least they're playing somewhat hard on a nightly basis, and a lot of them have a young player or 2 or 3 to be at least excited about. The Kings are the 3rd oldest roster in the league, and they're horrible, and they don't show up. They don't play for each other. Now, some of that certainly is on the coaching staff, and Doug could certainly do things better. His rotations could be better. X's and O's could be better, of course. But I do not blame Doug for what's happening here in Sacramento. It's not a coaching problem. It's a roster construction problem that Scott Perry needs to clean up. That being said, I haven't heard anything about Doug Christie's job being in jeopardy. I don't think it should be in any way. In fact, if the Kings and Scott Perry were to decide to fire Doug Christie, that would make me even more or even less comfortable with Scott Perry as a coach, because what did we hear him talk about so much during the offseason? This unity of vision, being on the same page. He and Doug Christie are united with what needs to happen. Well, if he were to give up on that before Thanksgiving or barely a month into the season, that's sending off alarm bells to me of, one, is Scott Perry, do his words matter and mean anything? And 2, was Doug Christie even Scott Perry's decision to begin with? And there's already speculation about that too. Alan, I'll just put it this way. I don't think Doug should be fired. I don't blame Doug for any of this. In fact, what I think Scott Perry, Vivek Ranadive, this entire organization top to bottom need to do, I think they need to go to Doug Christie and they need to empower him, give him the green light and say, do what you need to do playing-wise, play the young guys, take minutes away from these top veterans, and do it without the fear that you're going to be fired in a couple of years when the 2 years of your contract are up because you're not winning basketball games. That's what they need to do. That's the right thing for this organization Christie to give him the confidence and the freedom to play Nick Clifford, Maxime Reynaud, Keon Ellis, Keegan Murray, these guys that, in theory, quote-unquote, lower your chances of winning on a nightly basis, but help actually build towards some future that you just do not have right now. That's what I think the Kings need to do. I don't know if they're going to do it, but I certainly would not hire or fire Doug Christie at this point.
Just to be clear, Matt, do you feel the same way if the season ends? Are you saying mid-season or even after one season you think that you feel the same way if they move off of Doug after 1 year? Just to be clear.
Yeah, I don't think they should move on from Doug at any point this season. I think you ride it out. And then if you want to reevaluate during the offseason, that's just fine. But at the same time, the way this season is going, you're probably getting, hopefully, a top draft pick in the building next year. And if you feel that Doug can connect and resonate with these young players and get them to buy in for Sacramento and get them to start on this path to actually building a future, then stick with Doug as your coach and give him another full year to see what that looks like instead of half a year of this whatever the heck this veteran roster is, and then a lost season and months of playing the young guys, which is what I hope the Sacramento Kings do. So I personally think Doug should see out this entire year, and then we can reevaluate in the off season. But that's just me. And I feel like, I'm not reporting this, I'm just saying my personal feeling is that Perry and the organization feels the same way, or at least they should feel that way.
Matt George, you can catch him on ABC 10. Matt, thank you so much. This was as anticipated. We really do appreciate you, man. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. I know you're working all the time. You got Friday Night Lights. You got high school playoffs going on. So we really and the Kings, I guess. So we really appreciate you taking the time. Enjoy the rest of your day, your weekend. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
Sounds good. I'm glad you brought up the prep sports. Hey, it's semifinals all over the Sac Joaquin section for high school football tonight. So if you need some good sports to watch this evening, go and find your local game and check it out. And Alan, next time we'll do this like on a fax machine or a typewriter. We'll just keep moving back in time.
Sounds good. Matt George, thank you.